So we just have a simple button right here, and we're going to make this button use reducer instead of use state. So Marty the Money Bag is helping you out with the API here. What we're going to do is say react.useReducer, and our first argument is not the initial state like it is with useState. Instead, it is a reducer function, and we could inline it like this, no problem. But typically, I find it's better to create a separate function. Here we'll call it countReducer, and then reference that function in here. Now, it's not necessarily better, but this is just kind of the convention that I go with. Sometimes it can be useful to have the reducer inlined like this, so you have access to things like props. But when you call the dispatch function that we'll see here in a second, you can actually forward those props along as well anyway. And so I like to separate it, and we'll just put the count reducer right here. All right, so now all that's left is we need to update our count reducer so that we don't have to change any of the code here below. So we want to keep in mind that the first argument to our reducer is going to be our state. So I'm going to copy and paste that, and that's the current value of the count. So to make it even more explicit, we can call this the count if we wanted to, but I'll just leave it as state. And then the second argument is called the action, and the action is whatever is passed to our updater function, this setCount function, which is referred to as the dispatch function. So whatever is passed to this dispatch function will be the second argument to our reducer. We can call this the new state. And sweet. So how do we make this behave as it had before, where we get the current state, which would be our count, and the new state, which is going to be the new value that we want for our state? Well, if we're just getting the new value we want for the state, what we need to return is the new value we want for the state. Oh, that's interesting. Let's just return the new state. Ta-da! And it still works. So we learned a couple of things here. We have useReducer. The first argument is a reducer function that accepts the current state and then an action or whatever the dispatch function is called with. And the second argument here is the initial value for our state, which happens to be a number. And so our count is a number, and setCount is going to be called with some value that we want to update the state to. And that's exactly what we're doing here in our count reducer, is we just ignore that current state and we just return that new state. And that's what our state will get updated to.